Welcome back to the channel. I'm Skylar James, and today we're talking about investing in something that every single person needs every day, 3 times a day. We're going to be talking about investing in food. But first, I want to start off with a quick talk about cultured meat, healthy meat, slaughter-free meat, in vitro meat, vat-grown meat, cell-based meat, clean meat, cultivated meat, or synthetic meat. These are all different names for a new food alternative called lab-grown meat. Here's a couple questions for you. Would you eat lab-grown food? Do you think lab-grown food will acquire 200,000 new customers each day? In other words, will 200,000 people start replacing their traditional meat and plant diet with lab-grown alternatives every single day going forward? I don't think so either. If you're an investor in the agricultural sector, then that's great news for you because it means traditional ag companies are collectively gaining new customers at a rate of 200,000 per day. And those customers stick around for a long time. 70 years, 365 days a year, 3 meals a day makes for a very sticky customer. You might know I love agricultural themes because you've seen the other half dozen ag investing videos on my channel. And you're a subscriber, right? Right? If you are, thanks for being one. The ag space is special because you don't need an accounting degree to see the strong revenue growth that is ahead for these businesses. And of course, demand for their product is global, and production is global. You might have heard of domestic bias in investing, where we as Americans tend to invest in American companies and American markets. The words of Warren Buffett ring in my ear now.
Never bet against America.
All good and true, but there are fantastic investment opportunities globally. So we need a global investment portfolio. Today it's about choosing the perfect agricultural ETF. But I'm going to warn you, everything about picking an ETF in this space is like eating a soup sandwich. It is a giant mess. That's the short story. I'll give you the long story too. I've done the homework, and I can give you the cleaned up version in under 10 minutes. But understand, this will be a mess to continue the research on your own. The very first thing to know is that searching for an agricultural ETF isn't easy as cutting down a corn stalk. Look, here's a list of all the ag ETFs to evaluate. 17. Sweet, lots of choices. But wait, corn, soy, ETNs? Total returns of specific crops? These aren't the droids I'm looking for. These are commodity trackers, not agricultural businesses. Maybe you've gotten this far in your own research and given up here. Maybe you figured there weren't any ETFs for covering businesses in the ag space. But the ETFs we're actually looking for are housed in the agribusiness or agricultural producer categories. Just another example of what I always say about ETFs. There are so many choices and so many niches to choose between. As for agribusiness ETFs, there are only 3 in total. You will find others if you Google long enough. COW, SPAG, and ISAG are 3 I kept running into, but those aren't accessible to US investors. Those are Canadian and London-based investment products. I may have just saved you an hour of spinning your wheels trying to figure out why you can't buy ISAG at the brokerage. If me wasting an hour so you can save that hour is helpful, please hit that like button. Nonetheless, the 3 ETFs we can invest in seem adequate. And I say that because of their similar year-to-date performances. This is especially interesting given how vastly different their portfolios are arranged. More on that in a second. But let's run through my ETF screening tool first. The primary hurdle to clear before buying an ETF. Who's the AUM leader and how far behind are the AUM laggards? Well, MOO runs away with this one. And cows can run. I have actually been charged by a heifer before, and it was terrifying. BlackRock's VEGI ETF is 1/14th the AUM of MOO. 1/14th. And the First Trust FTAG, $5 million, is like one cow fart compared to MOO's assets under management. I know of hot dog carts that do more volume than FTAG. Can I just say too, First Trust, they are not making much in fees. It looks like they're still running Windows 95 over there. Their website made me feel like I'm doing investment research on a TI-83 calculator. Anyway, I peeled back to FTAG, regardless of their low AUM and MS-DOS interface, because there are only 3 ETFs in this space. Let's see what we're gonna be passing on. Right out of the gate, I like the global presence of its holdings. Agricultural is global, so that's a positive correlation with my expectations. Even the top 10 only has 2 US-based listings. I like that too. It casts aside the domestic bias we talked about earlier. But what's the expense ratio? 0.7%. Okay. I guess their AUM will stay right at 5.9 million because I'm not putting any money into that. That leaves us with Big Daddy VEGI from iShares and Van Eck, the runaway cow. I'm giving a point to Van Eck for being the AUM leader. I'm giving the point to VEGI for their lower expense ratio. Matter of fact, I'll give them an extra point just for being a BlackRock product. You've seen my BlackRock video. You know I love their business as a whole. Looking over the holdings, VEGI brings diversity with well over 100 firms. That's a point for VEGI. But oh no, 20% to Deere? What? A point to MOO. That's absurd. 2 points to MOO. You should never be paying an expense ratio of any amount to hold 20% of one stock. Why should I pay almost 0.08% in fees for iShares to nurture these Deere shares for me? Are they singing them to sleep at night? Why should that cost me any money? I can try to look past it. I can point out the other 80% of the ETF is 150 some holdings, and that such a diverse ratio probably captures a lot of the space. But your entire investment wagon is hitched to a John Deere tractor. Look, agriculture is value now, growth later. It is. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Tractors don't necessarily fall under that umbrella. Goodness sake, Deere is inside Cathie Wood's space exploration ETF. There's nothing value or under the radar about Deere. So buying VEGI buys you what's already been hyped up. When you consider that Kubota and Toro, 2 other tractor and implement manufacturers, also sit in the top 10 of VEGI, this ETF is officially 1/4 tractors. I'm not going any further. This isn't what I want in an ag ETF. Yes, tractors are part of what I want, but I want seed innovators and fertilizer producers. I want companies selling products to repeat customers every single year, not once in a generation, as with tractors. Okay, gotta cool myself down. I got a little worked up there, but 20% weighting of one stock in an ETF is just too much. So we return to the mad cow, MOO. Remember, it's the AUM leader, and it comes with a top 10 equaling 57% of the fund, same as FTAG. Definitely on the higher end of what I like to see in an ETF, but how many times have we heard the biggest tech players steer the S&P 500, yet they're a fraction of the index compared to these ag allocations? MOO's top holding, Zoetis, is the largest global animal health company, so says their website. Not afraid to say it, I've never actually heard of them. But poking around their website, I immediately recognized products I've given to my dog. Revolution, Cytopoint, and Clavamox are commonly administered pet meds. Hey, I'm a repeat customer, and I didn't even know it. That is great. Point for MOO. Zoetis doesn't appear at all in VEGI's holdings though. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is interesting. So here comes the soup sandwich. I could keep going through MOO's holdings and tell you that it contains a bunch of companies I'm not terribly familiar with, and that the bottom 25 holdings of MOO add up to less than 11%, but I'm not going to. Instead, I want you to take away that this is maybe the most difficult ETF dissection I've done to date, and that just finding out how to invest in this space is a mess. Choosing a single ETF is complicated and ultimately unsatisfying, and spending any time on the First Trust website causes me to slide into a gentle coma. That said, I'm gonna buy MOO. I'm going to trust the far and away AUM leader. Just because I'm not familiar with every single company it holds doesn't mean it's a bad investment. It means I'm an honest investor. Maybe I'll put 10 hours into learning about each and every holding, or maybe I just trust Van Eck and the Skylar James ETF screening process that hasn't let me down yet. And hey, MOO gets a pretty good ESG rating from MSCI. Check out my video on that system if you haven't seen it yet. Remember, as other people start to ping on the ag space, they'll likely buy MOO too, lifting higher the stocks inside it. I also want to highlight that these three ETFs are so different that maybe we're wrong to compare them as apples and apples. Look at these overlaps. None of the three ETFs overlap each other by any greater than half. The holdings are so different. Now look at the two biggest semiconductor ETFs for comparison, SOX and SMH. This is what we typically see in an ETF screening, almost 75% overlap. And look, I don't hate Deere. Not by a long shot. They did $39 billion in revenue last year with a market cap of $111 billion. But look at this chart. You're smart. You know why this chart should raise concern about Deere being 20% of an ETF that you're about to start a position in. So VEGI is out of the question for me, and FTAG would be a great fit if it had more than $35 in assets under management. So here's what a cleaned up soup sandwich tastes like. MOO, we can invest in. Cow, we can't invest in. FTAG, investable for Americans. SPAG, not investable. MOO is the AUM leader. VEGI is 1/5 Deere. Ag investing good. Subscribing to the channel, best option. What do you think of investing in agribusinesses? Would a 20% holding in an ETF dissuade you? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for joining, and I'll catch you on the next one. I tried to find lab-grown meat in my area, and none of the grocery stores actually seemed to carry it. They referred me to the butcher, and the butcher just kind of laughed and said that they don't carry any of that. Anyway, if you have tried lab-grown meat, let me know what you thought of it. Maybe I'll give it a try too and cook it on this channel.